Hey guys, Tonic here. Today I want to show a very basic guide on how to get started with character builds. In this video we're going to take a look at the best types of builds, different misconceptions about builds, and also how to achieve those builds. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Now I want to start this off by saying I know that character building can be very intimidating. I remember my first time trying to do a character build and it was horrifying. Everywhere I looked was just these amazing god tier bloodied commandos or junkie commandos or these crazy AC-130 heavy build guns, and it was just really intimidating for me. So I want to try and create a resource for people that are newer to the game or just maybe that have not even dipped their feet into the world of character building, and I hope that this video serves them well. Now, one of the biggest misconceptions that I always see about character builds is that people think that you need a very good legendary weapon to start your build, and I can tell you right now that that is so far from the truth. You do not need a legendary weapon to start your build. You can do character builds with basically anything in the entire game, and honestly, a legendary weapon can just kind of be a bonus when you're starting out. Now, to prove this point, I've crafted a very basic non-legendary suppressed pipe rifle and took it down to the White Springs. So as you can see, this thing is putting out some very decent damage. The ammo capacity isn't that great, but it's just a pipe rifle, so it's not really that big of a deal. A handmade or even a combat rifle would have honestly performed twice as well, but that's completely besides the point. The point is that you do not have to worry about having those crazy legendary weapons, and that you should honestly worry more about just putting your perk cards in the proper places to maximize your weapon of choice's damage. The second really big misconception that I see is that you should not start your character build until you're level 50 or higher so that you can properly reallocate your perk cards. And I gotta say that has some merit to it because it is a lot easier to try and move stuff around when you're at a higher level, but I honestly started my character build around level 25. I remember that was kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a stealth character, I wanted to use suppressed weapons. Just like Skyrim with everyone wanting to be a stealth archer, I wanted to be a stealth commando. So that's what I did. Around level 20 I started getting all my commando perk cards, my VATS perk cards and all that, and around level 45 I actually had a fully functioning commando stealth build. So the people that tell you to wait till level 50, they aren't necessarily wrong, and they're actually saying it with good intentions of trying to save you the headache of messing up your build, or maybe you think you made the wrong choice or something. But if you are as eager as I was, you can get started on it a little bit early. Now with all that out of the way, let's take a look at how to start a character build. There's many ways you can look at it and many different starting points, but I think that this is the most effective. And again, I do want to say that this is a very basic look at character building. Also, I'm going to focus on the builds themselves first, and then talk about how you can work your legendary weapons in after. Firstly, you're going to want to choose if you want to wear power armor or not. Power armor is mostly used with heavy gunner builds, and I actually have seen power armor melee builds as well as some power armor shotgun builds. At lower levels, it is kind of hard to get a decent full set, so it's probably best to leave power armor builds till later on, but if you are ready for it, you can get these perk cards to help maximize your power armor's potential. Now these cards are pretty much universal in power armor involved builds, and they all can be also leveled up to increase their effectiveness. Now not everybody wants to wear power armor, and non-power armor builds are very popular, mostly for the reason of trying to maximize your stealth because you do get a double damage bonus while sneaking. These builds are most closely associated with stealth commandos or snipers, run and gun builds, or even ninja melee builds. Now if you don't want to wear power armor, you should use these perk cards as most non-power armor builds use them, and they are very helpful. And again, these perk cards are pretty universal with most builds, and they mostly make up for the lack of damage resistance or carry space that power armor can provide. Now this is actually where it gets a little confusing, but I'm going to try my hardest to simplify it. So there's several types of main categories of builds. Commando is an automatic rifleman, a marksman is a single shot rifleman, heavy weapons, shotgunner, or melee builds. Each build is very different from each other, and they also have different legendary weapon effects that complement them the best. A commando build will always use these perk cards. These builds are absolutely amazing in stealth and arguably the strongest in the game in terms of putting out damage currently. They're generally utilizing VATS for strong headshot bonuses and critical hits. Most often you will find that these builds are either bloodied, junkied, or anti-armor focused with their legendary weapons of choice. The rifleman build, also called a marksman build and even sometimes referred to as a sniper build, is pretty much always going to use these same perk cards as a commando build just due to them all using rifles. There are two major differences though between them. Number one is that they take the rifleman perk cards, which will help them with their single shots and bolt actions, and number two is going to be the legendary weapons that can complement this build. Now yes, a lot of these builds still do use a bloodied or junkied or anti-armor weapon, but they can actually make great use of the instigating effect as well as the stalker effect. Now I don't really have any stalker weapons, but I do have a very good instigating lever action rifle. And as you can see, this thing can completely one-shot super mutants, so if you want to be a single shot sniper sneaky character, a rifleman build is great for you. Now let's take a look at heavy gunner builds. Heavy gunner builds are pretty much always in power armor, but I actually have seen effective heavy gunner builds without it. Now these are the perk cards that you will most likely want for this build, and one really interesting thing to note about heavy gunner builds is just how many different variants of this build that there is. You can become an AC-130 build where you get a jetpack and explosive weapon and just fly around destroying everything under you. You can become a total tank using a vampire weapon and become practically unkillable. There are so many different kinds of builds, and for that reason, so many different legendary weapons and effects that complement this build. Whether it be from bloody to junkies to vampire, even two-shot furious medics or executioners or suppressors, and even then I'm probably missing some. There is so much freedom with this build, and it's definitely a super interesting rabbit hole to get into. Now onto shotgun builds. Right here are the perk cards that you're going to want to use, and I do gotta say shotgun builds are probably the best build for low level players. Now the damage coming out from shotguns is super nice, but also another not very talked about bonus is just how easy it is to find ammo for these things. It's dirt cheap in vendors, you can find it pretty much everywhere in the game world, and honestly a lot of high level players, if you just ask, or even if you don't ask, they will probably drop you shotgun shells, so ammo would probably not be an issue for this one. Now if you decide to go with a shotgun build, some legendary weapons to keep an eye out for are going to be your two-shot shotguns, your quads, your bloody, junkied, or even suppressor shotguns. And finally, melee builds. These are again amazing for low level players as they put out some super strong damage right from the start and you don't even have to worry about ammo. Right here are the perk cards that you're going to want to use. Now these builds are another one of those with a ton of different variations from one-handed to two-handed weapons and honestly so much more. But they all turn out very strong and useful from early game to even super late game situations like fighting the queen. The melee part of the community is very much dedicated to these builds, and right here on YouTube you will find endless amounts of them. No matter which one you choose between one-handed or two-handed, it will most likely be very OP. These builds are very strong, and the weapons to look out for mainly are going to consist of bloodied, junkied executioners or instigating. So I created this flowchart covering everything I've talked about so far, and I hope that you can look back on this for reference if you ever need it. And also, each of these 5 main builds do have their own subcategories, but to get into each individual build would take a very long time, and I honestly would not do most of them justice. There are so many videos on YouTube that go into extreme depth on each individual build, and even as far as talking about specific armor pieces or extra legendary stars in your weapons that would work best with that build. Some great channels to check out for this are going to be TYR or Angry Turtle. Both of them I'll put down in my description below. They really get into the details, like they even start doing math on these certain builds. They're very talented, and if you are looking to get into a very specialized build, I would highly recommend giving them a shot. Also, another very important thing to note is that these are just the most commonly used builds. You can also find pistol builds or even builds that don't revolve around damage at all, like merchant builds or ones dedicated to getting the most carry space. Also, I do want to say that I'm sorry if this video came out confusing at all, because I did try and take a ton of information and pack it down into a very short video, so hopefully it made a lot of sense because it was a lot of information to try and condense. And now the most important final note that I want to say is that you do not need a build to play this game. Sure, you might see a ton of people with builds, and a majority of them actually do have them, but if you do not want to build, do not feel pressure to try and go out there and do it. You can play through the entire game without a build and do just fine. I've seen people beat the game without even using a single perk card, so if you're not putting out the same damage other people are putting out, don't worry about it. You don't have to try and lose sleep over it. You don't have to go out there and grind out to try and get these crazy weapons or all these perk cards. You play the game how you want, and most importantly, have fun while doing it. And with that, I'd like to say that I really hope this video did help someone out. If it even helps out one person, I will be so happy, because I really struggled with this when I was starting out. And I'd like to also say thank you guys for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. And a massive thank you to all the channel members: 23 Icefire, Ratty Star, Jay Smith, Argent Deer, Bowser Double Frang, PS4 PH Gaming, Ice Cream Manny, Chris Decker, Robert Kennard, Yosevated, Theodore, Captain Awesome, Digital Aardvark, Lone Samurai OG, Diathan Gaming, Christy Mel, and Schwitz. You guys are amazing. I love you, and have a great weekend.